The great meeting hall on Proxima Station buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Aliens of every shape and size filled the massive chamber. Some looked like giant birds with bright feathers. Others had scales like snakes, but walked on two legs. A few glowed with their own light, floating above their seats like living stars. Ambassador John Carter from Earth stood at the center of it all. His dark blue uniform looked plain next to the fancy clothes worn by aliens who ruled entire star systems in his hands. He held a small device that would translate his words into dozens of alien languages. John took a deep breath and began to speak. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Earth comes before you today with a simple request. We need help. A great enemy approaches our home, and we cannot face it alone. The words had barely left his mouth when the laughter started. It began with a low rumble from the rock-like Vorthan delegates. Then the bird people started, their sharp, barking sounds. Soon the entire hall echoed with alien laughter that hurt human ears. Commander Lisa Brooks sat in the back of the hall, watching her people get mocked. Her jaw muscles tightened as she listened to species after species dismiss Earth's plea for help. Lisa had fought in 3 different wars before humans ever met aliens. She knew what real danger looked like. The Void Swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The Void Swarm had already destroyed 3 human colonies on the edge of space. Their ships were like nothing in any database. They looked alive, growing and changing as they moved through space. When they attacked a planet, they didn't just destroy it, they ate it. Every living thing became food for more ships, more weapons, more death. Your species joined this council only 20 years ago, said General Quinthara. She was one of the bird people with golden feathers that sparkled under the station lights. You humans are still children playing with toys. The Void Swarm has destroyed civilizations that were old. When my people first learned to fly between stars. More laughter filled the hall. John Carter felt his face grow hot with shame, but he kept talking. We know we are young. We know we have much to learn, but we also know how to fight. Give us a chance to stand with you when the enemy comes. Dr. Kevin Martinez sat next to Lisa Brooks, his hands shaking with anger. Kevin had spent 15 years learning alien languages and customs. He had traveled to dozens of worlds, making friends with creatures that looked like nightmares from human stories. Now those same friends were laughing at his people like they were stupid animals. The Void Swarm cannot be fought with primitive weapons, wheezed Ambassador Zethgar. His reptile face twisted into what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Your people still use chemical rockets to reach orbit. You have no real energy weapons. Your computers are barely smarter than pocket calculators. The worst part was that some of what they said was true. Earth's technology was far behind most galactic civilizations. Human ships were slow and clumsy compared to alien vessels that could cross the galaxy in days. Human weapons seemed like toys next to devices that could crack open moons. But John Carter knew something these aliens didn't understand. Humans were good at learning. They were even better at surviving. We are not asking you to fight our battles for us, John said, his voice growing stronger. We are asking for the chance to fight beside you. Earth may be young, but we will not hide while evil spreads across the stars. Elder Murden of the ancient hierarchy finally spoke. His voice was old and tired, like wind blowing through empty caves. The ancients had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before humans ever discovered fire. When he talked, everyone listened. Little humans, he said slowly, your courage is noted. But courage without power is just a way to die quickly. The Void Swarm has consumed entire star systems. Billions of beings with technology far beyond yours have become food for their endless hunger. Return to your small blue world. Take your people and run to the far edges of space. Perhaps some of you will survive as refugees among the civilized races. The words hit John Carter like a physical blow. After 20 years of diplomacy, after decades of trying to prove that humans belonged among the stars, it all came down to this: when Earth needed help the most, their so-called allies were telling them to run away. Lisa Brooks stood up from her seat. Her voice cut through the laughter like a sword. You think we are weak because we are young. You think we are stupid because our ships are slow. But there is one thing you don't understand about humans. The hall grew quiet. Even the floating energy beings stopped their soft humming. We don't know how to quit, Lisa said. When something tries to destroy us, we don't run. We don't hide. We learn everything we can about our enemy. Then we find a way to win, Ambassador Zethkar hissed. With amusement, bold words from a species that barely knows how to leave its own solar system. We'll see, Lisa replied. Dr. Martinez gathered his papers and data files. 20 years of careful diplomacy and cultural exchange reduced to nothing. All those alien friends he thought he had made were now laughing at his species' death sentence. As the session ended, John Carter straightened his uniform jacket. The weight of 6 billion human lives pressed down on his shoulders when he spoke again. His voice was calm and clear. We came here hoping for allies. We leave knowing the truth. When the void swarm comes, Earth will face them alone. But we will face them. The 3 humans walked out of the Great Hall together. Behind them, alien voices continued to chatter and laugh. None of them noticed the cold look in Lisa Brooks' eyes. None of them saw the way John Carter's hands had stopped shaking. None of them understood that they had just made a terrible mistake. They had no idea what humans were capable of when they had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster at Proxima Station. Admiral Rachel Stone stood in the observation deck of Luna Base, looking out at the most secret project in human history. The Titan-Battleship Mark IX hung in space like a metal mountain, to kilometers of gleaming hull and deadly weapons. "How much time do we have left?" asked Chief Engineer Mike Thompson. His coveralls were stained with grease, and his face was tired from months of 18-hour work. "Days." Behind him, through the thick glass, thousands of workers swarmed over the massive ship like busy ants. "Our spy satellites detected the void swarm 48 hours ago," Rachel replied. "They will reach our outer colonies in 2 days, maybe less, Doctor." Amy Walsh approached them with a tablet computer showing power readings. "That would have seemed impossible just a year ago. The fusion reactors are running perfectly. The gravity control systems are working better than we hoped. We might actually pull this off." What the aliens at the Galactic Council did not know was that Earth had been preparing for this day since humans first met other species 20 years ago. While aliens grew lazy and comfortable with their old technology, humans had done what they always did when faced with something new. They learned, they adapted, they got better. Captain Daniel Hayes walked down the main corridor of the Mark IX, checking systems and talking to his crew. 5,000 of Earth's best soldiers, scientists, and engineers had volunteered for what many people called a suicide mission. But Daniel didn't see it that way. He saw it as humanity's chance to show what they were really made of. "The aliens think we're cavemen playing with fire sticks," he said to his second-in-command, Commander Jana Price. "They have no idea we've been studying their technology for 20 years. Every alien ship that ever visited Earth, every piece of equipment they sold us, every treaty they made us sign. We learned from all of it. The truth was both simple and complicated. Human technology had not come from human minds alone. Every time an alien ship docked at Earth stations, human scientists were there watching and learning. Every alien device that broke down was quietly taken apart and studied. Every alien computer that connected to human networks left behind small pieces of code that clever programmers could read and understand. Dr. Robert Kim ran final tests on the quantum torpedo systems. In the ship's weapons bay, the computer models say our weapons will work very well against void swarm ships, he told his team. The question is whether reality will match our theories. The void swarm was different from every other enemy humans had ever faced. Their ships were not built in factories like human vessels. They grew like living things, feeding on metal and energy and anything else they could consume. When they attacked a planet, they turned everything on it into more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. Admiral Stone nodded as she read the latest reports. "We're about to find out if 20 years of secret research was worth it." Deep in the belly of the Mark IX, Sergeant Major Linda Crawford supervised the loading of the final weapon systems. These were not just copies of alien technology. Human engineers had taken alien ideas and made them better, faster, and more deadly than their creators ever imagined. The Void Swarm had eaten entire civilizations, but they had never fought humans before. They had never faced a species that turned every defeat into a lesson, every loss into fuel for improvement. Other races gave up when things got hard. Humans got angry and worked harder. Final systems check complete, reported Lieutenant Paul Anderson from the bridge. All weapons are loaded and ready. All crew members are at their stations. The ship is ready for combat. Captain Hayes looked around the bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had given up comfortable lives on Earth to fly into space on an untested ship with experimental weapons. They were volunteers, every single one of them. They could have stayed home and waited to see what happened. Instead, they chose to fight. Dr. Walsh, what's the status of our special surprise? Hayes asked. The physicist smiled for the first time in weeks. The molecular disruptor cannons are charging up nicely. If our calculations are correct, Void Swarm biometal will simply fall apart when hit by our beam weapons. Their ships won't just be damaged, they'll be dissolved. Commander Price studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. Long-range sensors show over 300 Void Swarm ships in the first wave. They're bigger than anything in our databases. Some of them are the size of small cities. Good. Hayes replied calmly, the bigger they are, the easier they'll be to hit. What the human crew didn't know was that their secret project had already been noticed by others. Alien spy satellites had detected strange energy readings from the Luna shipyards. Several Galactic Council members had quietly sent intelligence ships to watch what the humans were building, but none of them understood what they were seeing. Dr. Kim checked the quantum torpedo magazines one more time. Each torpedo contained enough energy to power a small city for a year. When they hit an enemy ship, they would tear it apart at the level of individual atoms. The Void Swarm had never faced weapons like these, because no other species had ever thought to build them. All departments report ready for departure, announced Commander Price. The ship is fully operational. Admiral Stone's voice crackled. Over the communication system from Luna Base, Titan-Battleship Mark 9, you are cleared for launch. The hopes and prayers of 6 billion people go with you. As the massive ship slowly moved away from Luna Base, Captain Hayes addressed his crew over the ship's internal communication system. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to make history. The Galactic Council thinks we're too weak to fight. The Void Swarm thinks we're just another meal. Both of them are about to learn something important about the human race. He paused and looked out at the stars ahead of them. We don't know how to lose. The Void Swarm came out of hyperspace like a cloud of death. Their ships looked wrong in ways that hurt to think about. Each vessel was huge, the size of entire cities, but they moved like living things. Metal and flesh seemed to blend together in ways that made no sense. The ships breathed and pulsed as they flew through space. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Titan-Battleship Mark 9, watching the enemy fleet appear on his screens. Round him, his crew worked with calm focus, even though they were looking at the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. Enemy count confirmed, said Lieutenant Paul Anderson from his sensor station. 312 ships in the first wave. We're seeing harvester ships, fighter swarms, and what look like command vessels. Their energy readings are off the charts. Commander Jana Price studied the numbers with growing worry. Sir, each individual ship is putting out power equal to a small moon. Intelligence reports say those harvester ships can eat an entire city. In just a few hours, the outer colonies had already gone silent. New Seattle, Heaven's Rest, and the mining stations around Jupiter's moons had all been consumed. Millions of people turned into fuel for the swarm's endless hunger. But this time, the enemy would not find defenseless targets. Dr. Kim, what's the status on our main weapons? Hayes asked. Quantum torpedoes loaded and ready to fire, the chief scientist replied from his station. Molecular disruptor cannons are charging up. All systems showing green across the board. The Mark the 9th was not alone in space. Earth had managed to build a small fleet over the past months. 3 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 24 fighters hung in formation round the massive battleship. Against the Void Swarm's numbers, it looked like a joke. The aliens back at the Galactic Council would have called it suicide. Major Susan Clark, the ship's weapons officer highlighted targets on the main display screen. "I recommend we hit the harvester ships first, if we can stop them from processing organic matter. We limit their ability to make more ships." "Agreed," Hayes said. He opened a channel to all human ships. "All vessels, this is Titan Command. Weapons are free to fire. Show them what Earth can do." The first quantum torpedo launched from the Mark 9 with a flash of blue light. It streaked across space and hit a void swarm harvester dead. In the center, the alien ship, designed to survive any known weapon, simply stopped existing. Where a city-sized vessel had been floating a second before, there was now only expanding dust and energy. The effect on the void swarm was immediate and shocking. Their neat formation wavered as alien minds tried to understand what had just happened. In thousands of years of conquest, spanning dozens of destroyed civilizations, nothing had ever made one of their ships just disappear. "Direct hit," shouted Lieutenant Anderson. "Target completely destroyed. No debris larger than molecules." But the swarm learned fast. That was how they had survived for so long. Within moments, their ships began moving in wild patterns to avoid more torpedo hits. Return fire lit up the space around the human fleet. Their weapons were unlike anything in any database. Streams of living energy that could turn metal into organic matter, which they could then harvest and use. "Evasive action," ordered Commander Price as alien fire streaked past the bridge windows. "All batteries, return fire." The molecular disruptor cannons opened up, sending focused beams of destructive energy at the enemy fighters. Void swarm ships that had been built to resist every known weapon simply fell apart. As their atoms were torn away from each other, the smaller human destroyers darted between the massive alien vessels. Like wolves attacking a herd of cattle, Colonel Jack Turner led the human fighter squadrons through the chaos of battle. His voice crackled over the radio. "Titan Command. Their hull material is like nothing we've ever seen. Our regular weapons barely scratch them, but the new disruptor technology is working perfectly." The battle went on for hours. Space around Jupiter filled with the light of explosions and energy beams. The void swarm had superior numbers, which meant they could lose ships without caring. But they had never faced weapons that could erase their vessels from existence. For the first time in their long history, they were losing ships faster than they could adapt to the threat. Human ships danced through the alien formation, using their speed and maneuverability to stay alive. The Mark 9 and her sister ships formed the center of the defense, their heavy weapons carving holes through enemy formations. "Their armor is adapting," reported Dr. Kim as he watched his instruments. "But it's not fast enough. Our disruptor beams are breaking down their biometal faster than they can repair it." As the hours passed, something incredible began to happen. The void swarm, the terror of the galaxy, began to retreat. Ships that had never run from any fight started pulling back from the human fleet. "They're withdrawing," called out Major Clark. Long-range sensors show the surviving ships moving back toward the outer system. Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "Dr. Kim, are you reading massive communication traffic between their ships?" "Yes, sir. It looks like they're trying to analyze our weapons technology. They're sharing data about our disruptor beams and quantum torpedoes." "Good luck with that," Hayes replied. "Even we don't fully understand how some of our systems work." The retreating void swarm left behind a field of scattered particles, where their ships had been destroyed. But Hayes knew this was only the beginning. The swarm would return with new tactics, new adaptations, and probably many more ships. "All ships, damage report," he ordered. The answers that came back were better than he had dared to hope. Humanity's first major battle with the void swarm had been a stunning victory. 3 destroyers lost, 14 fighters destroyed, against an enemy that had consumed entire star systems. It was almost unbelievable. As the human fleet regrouped and began rescue operations, news of the battle started spreading across the galaxy. On Proxima Station, alien delegates who had laughed at Earth's request for help were now staring at combat reports in shocked silence. The primitive humans had just accomplished something no other species had ever managed. They had made the void swarm retreat. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council happened within hours of receiving the first battle reports from the Sol system. The same chamber that had echoed with laughter at humanity's expense now buzzed with confused whispers and shocked murmurs. Admiral Kethman of the Stellar Navy stood before the assembled delegates with a data pad in his shaking hands. He was a veteran of 43 different wars, but the numbers on his screen made no sense to him. The preliminary reports show that the human fleet engaged a full void swarm attack force, he began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. Enemy strength was 312 vessels. Human fleet strength was 47 vessels. Ambassador Zefgar, the same reptile who had mocked Earth's plea for help just weeks ago, leaned forward in his seat. And how quickly were the humans consumed? He asked. They weren't, Admiral Kethman replied flatly. The void swarm was forced to retreat after losing 109 ships. Human losses were 3 destroyers and 14 fighters. The silence that followed was complete. Not even the energy beings made their usual humming sounds. General Quinthara of the Bird People, her golden feathers now flat against her skull in shock, was the first to speak. That's impossible, she said. No single species has ever achieved better than a 4-to-1 loss ratio against the swarm. Ever, Elder Murden of the ancient hierarchy, his ancient mind struggling to process the information, spoke in barely more than a whisper. The humans achieved approximately a 15-to-1 kill ratio in their favor, in their first major engagement with the swarm. Dr. Veltara, the Council's chief science officer, had been frantically studying the combat footage sent by long-range monitoring stations. The weapons' signatures are completely unknown to our databases. Their projectiles appear to cause molecular breakdown at the quantum level. The energy readings suggest technology at least 2 centuries beyond our current understanding. Back in the Sol system, news of the victory spread quickly through human colonies and Earth itself. But Captain Daniel Hayes knew better than to celebrate too early. The Void Swarm's retreat had been tactical, not a real defeat. They would return, with new ships and new ways to fight. Dr. Kim, what's our status on making more quantum torpedoes? Hayes asked during the meeting after the battle. Production facilities on Luna are working day and night, the chief scientist replied. We can make about 50 torpedoes per day, but we're running low on the special materials we need. Commander Jana Price looked over intelligence reports. From the outer system, long-range sensors show the swarm is gathering near the asteroid belt. They're also sending scout ships in all directions. They're calling for backup, said Major Susan Clark. Standard swarm behavior when they run into unexpected resistance. What the human fleet didn't know was that their victory had caused something that had never happened before in galactic history. Species that had dismissed Earth as a backward planet were now frantically trying to figure out what they had missed. The energy beings had redirected 3 of their deep space monitoring arrays toward the Sol system. The Crystal People had begun analyzing every frame of captured battle footage. Ambassador John Carter, still stationed at Proxima Station, found himself in the strange position of being sought out by the same delegates who had laughed at him. The wolf-like Fenris pack had requested a private meeting. The insect people had submitted formal requests about possible military cooperation. Honored Ambassador Zefkar approached Carter in the station's diplomatic section, his previous arrogance replaced by something that might have been respect. My government wishes to discuss potential defense agreements with your people. Carter studied the reptilian alien who had dismissed humans as evolutionary children just weeks ago. I'll send your request to Earth Command, he said simply. Though, I should mention they're quite busy at the moment. The irony was not lost on either of them. Humanity had asked for help and been refused. Now, as they stood alone against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, the same species that had abandoned them were beginning to realize they might need Earth's protection. On Earth itself, the reaction was mixed. Some people celebrated the victory and demanded that the government tell the aliens to solve their own problems. Others worried that humanity had just painted a target on their planet by showing how dangerous they could be. President Maria Gonzalez addressed the world from the White House. Today, humanity proved that we belong among the stars. We showed that courage and determination can triumph over seemingly impossible odds. But we must remember that this is only the beginning. The Void Swarm will return, and when they do, we must be ready. Dr. Amy Walsh and her team worked around the clock to improve Earth's weapons. The battle had shown that human technology could hurt the swarm, but it had also revealed weaknesses that needed to be fixed. The quantum torpedoes work perfectly, she told the Defense Committee, but they're expensive to make and we can't produce them fast enough. We need to find ways to make our weapons more efficient. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the surviving Void Swarm ships were doing something they had never done before. They were studying their enemy. For thousands of years, they had simply overwhelmed their targets with superior numbers. Now they faced weapons that could destroy their ships faster than they could build new ones. The swarm's collective intelligence began to adapt. New ship designs were created. Armor was modified. Tactics were changed. They had learned from their defeat, just as they always did. But this time, the lesson was different. This time, they had learned fear. Back on the Mark 9, Captain Hayes looked out at the stars and wondered what was coming next. He had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Void Swarm would return with new weapons and new strategies. When they did, humanity would have to be ready. Commander Price, he said, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need every ship, every weapon, and every person we can get. The next battle is going to be much harder. The galaxy had stopped, laughing at Earth. Now it was waiting to see what humans would do next. 6 days after the first battle, the Void Swarm returned with vengeance. Long-range sensors detected over 2,000 vessels emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. It was the largest swarm concentration ever recorded in galactic history. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Titan-Battleship Mark 9, now supported by every available human warship. The combined Earth fleet numbered barely 200 vessels, facing an enemy 10 times their size. Enemy fleet composition is unlike anything in our databases, reported Lieutenant Paul Anderson. They've brought ship types we've never seen before. The energy signatures suggest they've been specifically designed to counter our weapons. Dr. Robert Kim looked up from his analysis station. With concern, they've changed their hull composition. The quantum torpedoes will still work, but their effectiveness has been reduced by about 30%. They learn fast, observed Commander Jana Price, but so do we. What the swarm didn't realize was that humanity had spent the past 6 days doing more than just making ammunition. Dr. Amy Walsh and her team had been working day and night on improvements to their molecular disruptor technology. Captain Dr. Walsh reported from the engineering deck. We've successfully added new frequency generators to our disruptor beams. If our calculations are correct, the swarm's adapted hulls will actually make our weapons stronger instead of weaker. The battle began as the swarm crossed Pluto's orbit. This time, they came in organized waves, each group designed for specific jobs. Hunter-killer ships built to track down human fighters, massive siege platforms meant to crack open Earth's orbital defenses, and specialized harvester ships protected by thick biomechanical armor. But humanity had surprises of their own. The Mark the Ninth and her sister ships had been equipped with experimental gravity lens arrays that could focus their disruptor beams across impossible distances. When the first swarm wave entered range, they were met with precision fire that reached across millions of kilometers. Target locked, announced Major Susan Clark. All batteries, fire. The space around Pluto erupted in deadly light. Swarm ships that had been adapted to resist quantum torpedoes found themselves vulnerable to the modified disruptor beams. Their enhanced hulls, designed to deflect energy, instead spread it throughout their biomechanical structure, tearing them apart from the inside. Colonel Jack Turner led the human fighter squadrons in a desperate dance through the massive swarm. Formation, they're trying to overwhelm us with sheer numbers, he reported over the radio. But their adapted ships seemed slower than the first wave. The battle raged across the entire outer system. Human destroyers, outnumbered 50-1, used their superior speed to strike at the swarm's weak points. The Mark 9 and her heavy cruisers formed a moving fortress, their combined firepower carving holes through enemy formations. Hours passed. Ships exploded on both sides. the space around the outer planets filled with debris and energy, just when it seemed the human fleet might be overwhelmed by pure numbers. Something unexpected happened. Hyperspace rifts opened across the battlefield. Ships bearing the flags of the Galactic Council emerged, not just a few vessels, but entire fleets. 47 different species had come to help defend the Sol system. Admiral Kethmern's voice crackled across the communication channels. Earth forces, this is the Galactic Defense Fleet. We're here to assist. The combined might of nearly 50 species poured into the Sol system. Sleek alien cruisers with energy shields and plasma cannons. Massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Fighter swarms that moved like schools of fish through space. But even as they joined the battle, it became clear that humanity's weapons remained the most effective against the swarm. The aliens found themselves playing a supporting role to the species they had dismissed as primitive just weeks ago. All alien vessels, focus your fire on the smaller swarm ships, Hayes ordered. Leave the big ones to us. The final phase of the battle took place in the asteroid belt, where the swarm made their last desperate attempt at victory. Surrounded by the debris of their own ships and facing the combined firepower of half the galaxy, they tried to activate some kind of superweapon. A massive biomechanical construct began converting asteroids into additional ships. All ships, concentrate fire on that thing, ordered Hayes. Don't let them finish whatever they're building. The Mark 9, her hull scarred by hours of combat, led the final assault. Her quantum torpedoes and molecular disruptors, working together perfectly, tore the swarm's last hope apart at the atomic level. The massive construct simply dissolved into its component particles. As the final swarm vessel disintegrated, the Sol system fell silent except for the voices of survivors and rescue teams. Humanity had not just survived their first major galactic conflict. They had emerged as the deciding factor in the greatest military victory in recorded history. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and engineers began studying captured alien technology, Ambassador John Carter received a formal message from the Galactic Council. It was a unanimous resolution, the first in the Council's 1,000-year history. Humanity was not just being admitted as a full member of the galactic community. They were being invited to take a leadership role in the Council's military affairs. The species that had laughed at Earth's plea for aid were now asking Earth to protect them. Captain Hayes, his ship battered but victorious, looked out at the debris field where the most dangerous threat in galactic history had met its end. Dr. Kim, he said quietly, make sure our weapons technology stays classified. Something tells me the galaxy just became a very different place. The laughter had stopped. In its place was a new sound. 47 species asking Earth for protection. The age of human galactic leadership had begun, not through conquest, but through the simple act of standing firm when everyone else had given up hope. They had laughed at Earth, but Earth had the last laugh. The Titan-Battleship Mark 9 and her crew had not just won a battle, they had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever.